The unexpected encounter. The stench of smoke and death hung heavy in the air as Captain Josh Giles made his way through the rubble-strewn streets of the alien city. Distant explosions and the crackling sounds of weapon fire echoed in the night, a constant reminder of the war raging on this once peaceful planet between the Voran Empire and the Krill insurgency. Josh's unit had been sent to help evacuate civilians caught in the crossfire, but they had arrived too late. The insurgents had already swept through, leaving nothing but destruction and scattered corpses in their wake. Sorrow weighed on Josh as he surveyed the scene, his hand tightening around his plasma rifle. So much senseless loss of life filled him with anger and frustration, but there was no time to dwell on it. He had a job to do. Fan out and search for survivors, Josh ordered his squad of battle-hardened Marines. Stay sharp. Those Krill bastards could still be close by. As the soldiers moved out, Josh headed down a narrow alley, his augmented senses on high alert. Overturned hover carts and scorch marks scarred the walls, remnants of the chaos that had unfolded. Suddenly, a faint sound made him pause, a rustle followed by what sounded like a muffled whimper. Frowning, Josh followed the noise, carefully shifting aside a charred metal panel to reveal a small cardboard box. The whimpering was coming from inside. Josh lifted the flaps and peered in, his heart dropping at the sight before him. Nestled in a ratty blanket was a tiny green humanoid baby, its cherubic face scrunched up as it wailed. What the hell? Josh glanced around, but there was no sign of the parents who would leave a baby out here amidst all this chaos and danger. Reaching in, Josh gently swooped up the infant, cradling it awkwardly against his armored chest. The baby's cries diminished to soft sniffles as it stared up at him with luminous purple eyes. Josh felt a strange tug in his chest. He knew the Voran valued their children above all else. For them to abandon one like this meant the situation must be truly dire. Giles to base, I need an immediate evac, he calmed, his voice steady despite the chaos. I've got an infant Voran. No sign of the parents. Repeat, I have an abandoned baby here. Copy that, came the reply. AVAC shuttle en route to your position. ETA 10 minutes. Hang tight. Josh sighed, looking down at the baby, which had started to doze off in his arms, tiny green fists clutching his body armor. Looks like it's just you and me for now, little guy. Don't worry, we'll get you someplace safe. When the AVAC shuttle touched down later, Josh climbed aboard, greeted by incredulous stares from the other soldiers. Seriously, Cap, we're running a daycare service now. Private Warren scoffed, a mocking grin plastered across his scaly face. Stow it, Private, Sergeant Graves barked, though there was a glint of amusement in his eye. The captain did the right thing. We don't leave children behind, human or otherwise. Ignoring the comments, Josh strapped himself into a jump seat with the baby secured in his lap as the shuttle lifted off, soaring over the burning ruins of the city. His mind raced with thoughts of the battlefield. Battlefield rescues were one thing, but he was a warrior, not a babysitter. What did he know about caring for an alien kid? His musings were interrupted by a message over the comm from Commander Laron back at base. Captain Giles, what's your status? Did you find any survivors? The Voran officer asked in his guttural native tongue. Negative, sir, Josh replied. The insurgents didn't leave much. But I did find something else. A Voran baby abandoned in the combat zone. I couldn't just leave it there. There was a long pause. You brought an infant back to base? Commander Laron asked incredulously. Yes, sir. I know it's irregular, but I didn't have much choice. Negative, Captain. Laron cut him off. The High Council has closed our borders. We're not accepting any refugees, not even our own. Too much risk of insurgent infiltrators. Josh frowned, gripping the baby a little tighter. So what am I supposed to do with the baby, sir? Frankly, I don't give a damn, the commander said brusquely. We're not running an orphanage here. Find someplace else to dump the brat. Laron out. The comm clicked off, leaving Josh stunned. He looked down at the sleeping baby, mind racing. He couldn't just abandon a child, but if the Voron wouldn't take it, what choice did he have? As if sensing his distress, the baby opened its eyes and cooed softly, reaching up a tiny hand to pat his face. In that moment, staring into those innocent purple eyes, Josh knew he couldn't turn his back on this child. Alien or not, it needed him, and he would not let it down. "Guess it's just the two of us from here on out, kiddo," Josh murmured. "I guess we'll have to figure this out together somehow." Settling back in his seat, he started brainstorming how he would manage his daunting responsibility. A human soldier with no childcare experience suddenly responsible for an alien baby in the middle of a war zone. It sounded like the start of a bad joke, but Josh Giles had never been one to back down from adversity. If the universe had seen fit to drop this child into his life, then he would step up and be the protector and provider it needed, even if he had no idea what the hell he was doing. "Fake it till you make it," he told himself. That was the human way. As the shuttle flew on through the war-torn skies, Josh held the baby close and whispered a quiet promise. "Don't worry, kid. I've got you now, and I won't let anything bad happen to you." That's a promise from one tough bastard to another. As the shuttle landed at the alien military base, Josh's return was met with a chorus of gasps and incredulous stares from his fellow soldiers, both human and alien alike. He strode through the corridors, the tiny green baby cradled awkwardly in his arms, feeling the weight of their gazes boring into his back. Well, look who's gone all soft and maternal," Private Warren sneered, a mocking grin twisting his scaly face. "Never thought I'd see the day when the mighty Josh Giles would be playing nurse to a little green runt." "Careful, Warren," Sergeant Graves warned, though amusement danced in his eyes. "You know what they say about humans and their young. They're like those earth bears, fiercely protective and not afraid to rip your face off if you get too close." Josh shot them a withering glare, but it only fueled their laughter. Embarrassment mixed with annoyance heated his cheeks as he quickened his pace, eager to escape their taunts and find some privacy to figure out his next move. Even in the relative sanctuary of his quarters, he couldn't shake the feeling of being way over his head. He looked down at the baby, who was now squirming and fussing in his arms, and felt a surge of panic rise in his throat. "Okay, kid, let's get one thing straight," he said, his voice gruff with uncertainty. "I have no idea what the hell I'm doing here. I'm a soldier, not a damn babysitter, so you're going to have to work with me, all right?" The baby blinked up at him, unimpressed, and let out a loud, demanding wail. Josh winced, glancing around furtively, afraid someone might overhear. The last thing he needed was for the whole base to know that the fearsome Captain Giles was being bested by an infant. Over the next few days, Josh did his best to care for the baby while still carrying out his duties. It was a juggling act that left him feeling stretched thin and constantly on edge, always worried that someone would discover his secret and report him to Commander Laron. There were close calls, of course, like the time he was in the middle of a tactical briefing and the baby started crying, forcing him to excuse himself and sprint back to his quarters before anyone could investigate the noise. Or the incident in the armory when he accidentally knocked over a rack of plasma rifles while trying to change a diaper one-handed. His fellow soldiers seemed to take great pleasure in his struggles. They smirked and snickered whenever they caught sight of him with the baby, making snide comments about his new parental duties and wondering loudly how long it would be before he cracked under the pressure. But Josh gritted his teeth and carried on, determined not to let their mockery get to him. He knew what he was doing was right, even if it meant enduring a little ridicule along the way. Not everyone on the base was content to simply sit back and watch Josh flounder. Commander Raxa, in particular, seemed to take issue with his new role as caretaker. "You're a soldier, Giles, not a damn nanny," the Voron officer growled when he caught Josh trying to sneak a bottle of formula out of the mess hall. "That little brat is a distraction and a liability. I want it gone, you hear me?" Josh felt his hackles rise at the dismissive way Raxa referred to the baby. "With all due respect, sir," he said, his voice tight with barely contained anger. "This child is an innocent victim of this war. I couldn't just leave him to die out there." Rax's eyes narrowed. "You're walking a fine line, Captain. Don't forget who you answer to." But Josh refused to be cowed. He met Rax's gaze unflinchingly, his jaw set in a stubborn line. "I answer to my conscience, sir, and right now, it's telling me that protecting this baby is the right thing to do." As the days turned into weeks, Josh slowly started to find his footing as a caretaker. He learned how to change diapers without gagging, how to mix formula without making a mess, and how to soothe the baby's cries with a combination of rocking and off-key humming. He even gave the little guy a name, after the Voron word for resilient. It seemed fitting, given all the kid had already survived. But just as Josh was starting to feel like he might actually be getting the hang of this whole parenting thing, a new threat emerged. The Krill insurgents had gotten wind of the human soldier with the Voron baby, and they saw it as an opportunity too good to pass up. Josh knew he would have to be more careful than ever now. He couldn't let anyone get their hands on but he also knew that he couldn't keep the baby hidden away forever. Sooner or later, he would have to find a more permanent solution. Little did he know that solution might be closer than he ever imagined, for in a distant refugee camp, a fierce and beautiful Voron rebel named Sela was about to enter his life and change everything. The rebel's call. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, the base began to stir with the sounds of morning routines. The metallic clanks of soldiers preparing for the day resonated through the corridors. Captain Josh Giles stirred, glancing down at who was sleeping peacefully in his makeshift crib. A wave of warmth washed over him. He had grown deeply attached to the tiny creature, finding solace in their shared moments amid the chaos. But the reality of their precarious situation loomed heavy in his mind. Josh stood, stretching his muscles, and shook off the remnants of sleep. He had learned to adapt to life as a caretaker over the past few weeks, finding small joys in the mundane tasks of diaper changes and feedings. Yet, the shadows of the war outside constantly reminded him of the danger they faced. With a sigh, he dressed and prepared for the day ahead. He secured his plasma rifle at his side and made sure there was nestled safely in his baby carrier, which he had modified to accommodate both their needs. As he made his way to the common area, whispers of concern filled the air. Soldiers huddled in groups, their faces tight with worry. Josh's instincts kicked in. "What's going on?" he asked a nearby private, a lanky soldier with wide eyes. "Rumors about a Krill scouting party near the base," the private replied, anxiety evident in his voice. "They're looking for a human soldier with a Voron baby." Josh's heart sank. They were onto him. He had to act quickly to protect Gathering his thoughts, he decided he needed to inform Commander Rax about the potential threat. Despite their differences, Raxa was still a high-ranking officer who could help them navigate this precarious situation. As he approached Rax's office, he steeled himself for the inevitable confrontation. He knocked on the door, which swung open almost immediately, revealing the Voron commander's imposing figure. "Giles," Raxa said, his voice a mix of irritation and curiosity. "What do you want?" "We need to talk," Josh replied, stepping into the office. "I just heard there's a Krill scouting party nearby. They're specifically looking for me and the baby." Rax's expression hardened, his alien features betraying nothing. "You're sure of this?" "Absolutely," Josh said, his voice steady. "If they find us, they will be in danger. We need to come up with a plan to protect him." Raxa narrowed his eyes, considering Josh's words. "What do you propose?" "I think we should set up a perimeter and increase the number of patrols around the base. We can't let them get too close," Josh suggested. "I can lead a team to scout the area, and we can use decoys to mislead them." Raxa nodded slowly, a flicker of respect crossing his face. "Very well, Captain. I will authorize additional patrols and allow you to take a team. But if this is a trap, you will answer for it." "I understand, sir," Josh replied, feeling a surge of determination. He could not let anything happen to Tha. As he left Rax's office, he quickly gathered a team of soldiers he trusted, Marines who had seen enough combat to understand the stakes involved. "Listen up," Josh addressed his team in the briefing room. "We've received intel about a Krill scouting party looking for us. Our primary objective is to protect Tha and ensure he's kept safe. We'll move out in 10 minutes, so gear up." The soldiers nodded, their faces a mix of concern and readiness. Josh could see that some of them still viewed him as the baby captain, but he was determined to prove them wrong. He would show them that he could balance being a soldier and a caretaker. Once they were all equipped, Josh led the way out of the base, his heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. As they ventured into the war-torn landscape, the destruction was a stark reminder of the reality they faced. Ruined buildings and the remnants of battles long fought littered the ground. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and every sound seemed amplified. "Stay sharp, everyone," Josh ordered, scanning the area for any signs of movement. They moved cautiously, checking their surroundings as they navigated the debris-strewn streets. After a while, they reached a vantage point that overlooked a wide expanse where the Krill often patrolled. "We should set up here," Josh suggested. "We can see their movements and prepare for any encounters." As they settled in, Josh's thoughts drifted back to Tha. He wondered how the baby was doing back at the base, under the watchful eyes of the other soldiers. A part of him felt guilty for leaving him behind, even if it was for his protection. But he couldn't allow his personal feelings to cloud his judgment. Their safety was paramount. Hours passed as they kept watch, the sun slowly descending beyond the horizon. The shadows grew longer, and the air turned cooler. Just as Josh began to think they might have escaped the Krill's notice, a low rumble echoed in the distance, followed by the unmistakable sound of armored vehicles approaching. "Everyone stay low," Josh hissed, adrenaline surging through him. He peered through his binoculars, scanning the horizon. A convoy of Krill vehicles was moving closer, their dark forms contrasting against the fading light. "We have to warn the base," one of his soldiers whispered urgently. "No," Josh replied, thinking quickly. "If we alert them, they might scatter. We need to engage. We have to protect Tha." As the vehicles drew nearer, Josh could see figures moving inside. They were heavily armed and alert, scanning the area for signs of movement. He gestured for his team to spread out, taking up strategic positions behind debris and broken structures. "On my mark," he said, his heart pounding in his chest. "We'll take them by surprise. We only need to hold them off long enough for the base to prepare." The tension was palpable as they waited, breath held, eyes focused on the approaching convoy. At last, Josh raised his hand. "Now." The sound of gunfire erupted, filling the air with a deafening roar. Josh's plasma rifle lit up the night as he fired a lead vehicle, the energy bolt striking it with a bright flash. The Krill soldiers scrambled into action, returning fire as chaos erupted around them. Josh fought with fierce determination, his focus unwavering as he moved with precision and agility. He could hear the cries of his team as they engaged the enemy, their shouts blending with a cacophony of gunfire. They were outnumbered, but Josh refused to back down. He had a mission to protect. In the midst of the chaos, his thoughts remained fixed on Tha. He imagined the baby's bright eyes and the way he could softly when comforted. That image fueled his resolve. They could not lose this battle. They could not let the Krill win. Suddenly, a blast rocked the ground near him, sending debris flying and forcing Josh to take cover. "Get down," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He peeked out, assessing the situation. The Krill were advancing, pushing them back, and he needed to rally his team. "Form a defensive line," Josh barked, rallying his soldiers. They regrouped, finding cover behind a large pile of rubble. "We can't let them get past us. We hold this ground." With renewed determination, Josh took aim and fired, picking off enemy soldiers with calculated precision. His team followed suit, and they managed to create a temporary barricade, buying them some time. but they were still vastly outnumbered, and the Krill would not relent. As the battle raged on, a flicker of movement caught Josh's eye. A shadow darted behind a nearby building, and his heart sank as he recognized the shape. A small squad of Krill was making a flanking maneuver, aiming to surround them. "They're trying to cut us off," Josh shouted, urgency in his voice. "We need to split up and take them down." Josh quickly coordinated a plan with his team, dividing them into two groups to outmaneuver the enemy. As they moved, he felt the weight of leadership pressing on his shoulders, but he pushed through, keeping his focus on the goal. They moved swiftly, catching the Krill off guard and engaging them in a brutal firefight. Josh fought with every ounce of strength he had, determined to protect not just his team, but also the hope that they represented. The battle felt endless, but with every fallen Krill, he felt a surge of hope. Just when they seemed to gain the upper hand, a deafening roar filled the air. Josh looked up to see a massive Krill warship descending from the sky, its dark silhouette blocking out the sun. Panic surged through him. "We need to get back to base now." His team quickly regrouped, making a hasty retreat as the warship unleashed a barrage of fire, causing explosions around them. They ran, dodging blasts and weaving through debris, each step echoing with urgency. Josh's heart raced as they neared the base, but he couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over them. "Go, go, go," he yelled, urging his team forward. They reached the base just as the warship began to descend lower, its ominous presence looming over them. As they rushed through the gates, Josh's thoughts raced back to there. Is he safe? He wondered, pushing aside his fears. He had to focus. There was no time for doubt now. Once inside, he quickly gathered his remaining soldiers, ready to formulate a defense. "We need to prepare for an attack," he ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Raxa, I want additional troops at the perimeter. We can't let them breach the base." Raxa nodded, determination evident in his eyes. "We'll defend this place with our lives, Captain." As the soldiers rushed to fortify their positions, Josh felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. He had faced the worst, and now, with the help of his team and the resolve to protect there, he believed they could overcome any obstacle. But deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning. The war was far from over, and as long as the Krill were out there, they would stop at nothing to find him and his precious charge. With determination set in his heart, Josh prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to fight not just for survival, but for the hope that represented the future, the hope that he would do everything in his power to protect. The search for allies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the base erupted into a whirlwind of activity. Soldiers rushed to secure the perimeter, weapons at the ready, their faces tense with determination. Josh stood at the command center, anxiety gnawing at him as the warning alarms blared, a shrill reminder of the impending threat. He had to remain strong, not just for himself, but for those who depended on him for survival. "Captain, we've got movement on the scanners," a technician shouted, drawing Josh's attention. The main screen lit up with red dots, indicating enemy forces advancing toward their position. "It looks like the Krill are mobilizing for an attack." Josh's heart raced as he assessed the situation. The Krill were relentless, and their numbers seemed to multiply with every passing moment. "How many do we have?" he asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. "Approximately 30 armed soldiers," the technician replied, eyes wide with concern, "and they're closing in fast." "Damn it," Josh muttered under his breath. They didn't have time to waste. "Get the alert out to all personnel. I want everyone on high alert and ready to defend the base. We need to fortify our positions immediately." As the technician relayed the orders, Josh gathered his remaining soldiers in the command center. He looked each of them in the eye, drawing strength from their shared resolve. "Listen up, everyone. The Krill are coming, and they'll be looking for us, specifically for there. We cannot let them breach the base." A sense of urgency filled the air as the soldiers nodded, adrenaline coursing through their veins. They had been through battles before, but this was different. The stakes had never been higher, and the thought of losing the baby weighed heavily on Josh's heart. "Private Walker, you and your team will cover the south perimeter. I want you to set up barricades and prepare for an ambush," Josh ordered, directing his team with confidence. "Sergeant Graves, take your squad to the west. We need snipers positioned to cover our flanks. I'll take the north with whoever remains." As the soldiers dispersed, Josh felt a rush of gratitude. They were ready to fight, ready to defend not just their home, but the innocent life they had all come to cherish. He could feel the weight of their collective determination, and it steeled his resolve. Rushing to the northern edge of the base, Josh grabbed a weapon from the armory, a heavy plasma rifle, and took position beside a barricade made of scrap metal and debris. The adrenaline coursed through him as he peered through the sights, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. With every heartbeat, he felt the urgency of time slipping away. Minutes felt like hours as they waited in tense silence, every soldier on high alert. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows that danced across the barren landscape. The air was thick with tension, and the distant sounds of the approaching Krill soldiers grew louder. Then suddenly, the first wave appeared on the horizon. Shadows of armored figures moved quickly, their weapons drawn and ready. Josh's heart raced as he shouted, "They're here. Hold your positions." The air erupted with the crackle of energy weapons and the thunderous roar of gunfire. Josh fired his plasma rifle, the weapon responding with a satisfying hiss as it discharged a bolt of energy toward the advancing enemy. It struck a Krill soldier, sending him sprawling backward. Cheers erupted from his team, fueling their resolve as they fought back. "Keep pushing," Josh yelled, adrenaline surging as he moved to a better vantage point. "We can't let them breach the perimeter." The battlefield was chaos. Energy bolts whizzed past him, and the sounds of battle echoed in his ears, shouts, explosions, and the cries of the wounded. Josh moved with purpose, firing at the advancing Krill soldiers and providing cover for his comrades. Every shot counted, every decision mattered. But as the firefight raged on, Josh quickly realized that the Krill were more organized than he anticipated. They pressed forward, using the remnants of the city as cover. He could see their formations tightening, tactics shifting as they adapted to the defensive strategy of the human soldiers. "Get to the barricades," he shouted to his team, urgency in his voice. "We need to hold the line." Suddenly, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. Josh turned to see one of his soldiers fall, hit by a stray bolt of energy. The sight ignited a fire in his gut, a mix of anger and fear. "Fall back. Regroup at the barricades," he commanded, his voice carrying above the din. They fought their way back to the makeshift barricades, regrouping with the remaining soldiers. Josh's heart raced as he checked in with his team, assessing injuries and morale. "We need to hold this position. We can't let them breach the base, or they'll come for there." As if sensing his thoughts, a distant rumble echoed through the air. Josh looked up to see the massive Krill warship descending from the sky, its dark silhouette blocking out the last remnants of sunlight. Panic surged through him, but he quickly pushed it aside. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they would not back down. The warship's weapons charged up, preparing to unleash destruction. "Everyone, take cover," Josh shouted, diving behind the barricade just as a blast erupted, shaking the ground beneath them. Debris flew in every direction, and the soldiers scrambled to protect themselves. In that moment of chaos, Josh's mind raced. "We need reinforcements," he thought desperately. "We can't fight them off alone." As the dust settled, he realized that they were trapped. The Krill soldiers were closing in from all sides, their numbers overwhelming. With the warship above providing air support, it was only a matter of time before they were completely surrounded. "Raxa," Josh shouted into his comm device, desperate for guidance. "We need backup now. The Krill are pushing us hard, and we can't hold out much longer." Static filled the air for a moment before Rax's voice crackled through. "We're dispatching a unit to your location, Captain, but you must hold your position. We'll get you support as soon as we can." Josh clenched his jaw, determination igniting within him. "We will hold," he promised, rallying his soldiers. "We are fighting not just for ourselves, but for every innocent life at stake. We cannot let them take their—" Just then, a figure emerged from the chaos, a Voron soldier with fierce eyes and a determined expression. It was Scylla, the rebel warrior Josh had heard whispers about in the base. Her long dark hair flowed behind her as she approached, her presence commanding and fierce. "Captain," she said, her voice strong and clear despite the chaos. "I've come to help. I know these streets well. We can use guerrilla tactics to outsmart them." Josh felt a surge of hope as he looked into her eyes. "You have a plan?" he asked, grateful for her unexpected arrival. Scylla nodded, a fire in her gaze. "We can create distractions to draw their attention away from key points. We'll set traps, use the terrain to our advantage, and hit them where it hurts." "Let's do it," Josh replied, his heart pounding with anticipation. "I'll coordinate with my team. We'll need every able body on this." As they discussed strategies, the sound of approaching Krill soldiers grew louder. Josh knew they had to act fast. "Everyone, listen up," he shouted to his soldiers, urgency filling his voice. "We're about to switch tactics. We're going to engage the enemy, but we'll do it smartly. Follow Scylla's lead." With renewed determination, Josh and Scylla set their plan into motion. They spread their forces strategically, creating decoys and traps throughout the area. As the Krill approached, they unleashed their distractions, causing confusion and chaos among the enemy ranks. "Now, move," Josh shouted as they sprang their ambush. They fought with fierce resolve, pushing back against the overwhelming tide of Krill's soldiers. Scylla moved like a whirlwind, her agility and skill on full display as she struck down enemy after enemy with precision and grace. The tide began to shift in their favor as they fought valiantly, taking down key Krill leaders and dismantling their formation. Josh could feel the adrenaline surging through him, fueling his determination. They were doing it. Against all odds, they were holding their ground. But just as victory seemed within reach, a sudden explosion erupted nearby, sending Josh sprawling. He blinked against the dust and debris, scrambling to regain his footing. Panic clawed at his chest as he scanned the area further. "Scylla," he called out, fear gripping his heart. "Where's the—" "We have to get back to the base." "I'll cover you," Scylla shouted back, her voice fierce and unwavering. "Get to safety." Josh nodded, determination igniting within him once more. He sprinted back toward the base, heart racing, every instinct screaming at him to protect the baby. The battle was far from over, but he would fight to the bitter end for their safety. As he raced through the chaos, he could see soldiers rallying behind him, their morale renewed. Together, they pushed back against the Krill forces, their resolve unbreakable. They fought not just for survival, but for the future, a future that included their and the hope he represented. Finally, they reached the base, where chaos met with order as soldiers fortified their defenses. Josh breathed heavily, his heart pounding as he regrouped with his team. "We have to protect her at all costs," he reiterated, his voice steady despite the turmoil around them. "They will not take him from us." As they prepared for the next wave of Krill soldiers, Josh knew they had allies now, warriors willing to stand and fight for the innocent, warriors who believed in the same cause he did. Together, they would face whatever came next, united in purpose and determination. The final stand with renewed determination, the soldiers fortified their positions, weapons at the ready. The tension in the air was palpable, and the distant rumble of approaching Krill forces sent a shiver down Josh's spine. But he had allies now, Scylla and her rebels, soldiers willing to fight for the cause. "Hold the line," Josh shouted, rallying his troops as the ground trembled beneath them. "We will not let them breach this base. For there." The soldiers echoed his rallying cry, their resolve solidifying as they prepare for the onslaught. Josh took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline fuel his focus. They were not just defending a base. They were fighting for hope, for the future of the Voran people, and for the innocent life that had found refuge in their midst. As the Krill forces drew nearer, Josh could see their dark silhouettes forming against the setting sun, their weapons glinting ominously. "Get ready," he barked, positioning himself at the front lines. "Sela, you and your team take the left flank. We'll hold them here." Sela nodded, her eyes fierce with determination. "Let's show them what we're made of." As the first wave of Krill soldiers charged forward, Josh felt a surge of energy coursing through him. He aimed his plasma rifle, firing shot after shot, each bolt striking true as it ripped through the ranks of the enemy. The chaos of battle erupted around him, the thundering of footsteps, the screams of soldiers, and the crackle of energy weapons created a cacophony that fueled his determination. "Push forward," he shouted, urging his team to advance. They fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. The bond formed through shared struggles, driving them to protect not just their lives but each other. The sight of Sela gracefully maneuvering through enemy fire, dispatching Krill with swift precision, inspired them all. As they battled, Josh could see the heart of the Krill forces becoming disorganized. His heart raced as he realized they were successfully pushing them back. "We're gaining ground," he yelled, his voice hoarse from the effort. "Keep it up." But the Krill were relentless. As Josh took down another enemy soldier, a chilling realization washed over him. They were outnumbered, and the enemy was regrouping for a second wave. The Krill commander, a menacing figure clad in dark armor, appeared at the forefront of the advancing troops, rallying his forces with a piercing battle cry. "Fall back. Get to cover," Josh commanded, knowing they needed to prepare for what was coming. The soldiers scrambled to regroup, creating a defensive line, their faces set with grim determination. The ground shook as the Krill forces charged again, this time in greater numbers. Josh could feel the air crackling with tension. "We hold our ground," he bellowed, raising his weapon as the enemy closed in. "We will not falter." The Krill soldiers came at them like a tidal wave, their ferocity unmatched. Josh fired his plasma rifle, the shots ringing out like thunder, but it was clear that they needed more than just brute force to hold the line. "Sela," he shouted, searching for her among the chaos. "What's the plan?" "Create a diversion," Sela called back, her voice cutting through the noise. "We'll split their attention and hit them from both sides." "On it," Josh responded, rallying his team. "Listen up. We're splitting into two groups. One will hold the front line, and the other will flank the enemy from the right." With a series of nods, the soldiers fell into formation, ready to execute the plan. Josh and a small team moved to the right, creeping stealthily through the shadows of the debris-strewn battlefield. The urgency of the moment quickened their steps as they approached the unsuspecting Krill soldiers. "On my mark," Josh whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched as Sela and the main group engaged the enemy head-on, drawing their fire and creating an opening. "Now!" They burst from their hiding spot, catching the Krill off guard. Energy bolts flew as they opened fire, striking the enemy soldiers with precision. Josh felt a surge of exhilaration as they took down Krill one by one, the momentum shifting in their favor. But the Krill commander quickly realized what was happening. "Regroup. Form a line," he bellowed, attempting to rally his forces. Josh could see the panic in their eyes as they struggled to adapt to the sudden change in tactics. "Push them back," Josh shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. "We can do this." The battle raged on, each side exchanging fire, but the Krill were beginning to falter. Josh could see Sela coordinating the attack, her movements fluid and decisive as she weaved through the enemy, taking them down with lethal efficiency. The sight ignited something within him, a fierce admiration that drove him to fight harder. Yet, just as victory seemed within reach, a deafening explosion erupted nearby, sending Josh sprawling to the ground. Dazed, he blinked against the debris and the dust that clouded his vision. Get up, he urged himself, shaking off the impact as he looked around for Scylla and the others. Captain, Scylla's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and fierce. We're being flanked. They're coming from behind. Josh's heart dropped as he turned to see another wave of Krill soldiers emerging from the shadows. They had been too focused on the front lines to notice the encroaching danger. Fall back, he yelled, quickly repositioning his team. We need to cover the rear. As they regrouped, Josh felt a surge of fear for his soldiers and fear for Thar. The last thing he wanted was for the Krill to breach the base and threaten the innocent life they had sworn to protect. Stay close, he shouted, leading his team toward the new threat. They moved as one, determined to protect their own. But the Krill were relentless, pushing forward with renewed vigor. Hold the line, Josh barked, taking aim at the advancing soldiers. He fired shot after shot, his heart pounding in rhythm with the battle. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him, but he refused to give in. As the Krill charged, Josh saw Scylla fighting alongside him, her fierce determination shining through as she engaged the enemy with ruthless efficiency. But as they battled, he noticed the tide of the fight shifting once again. Fall back to the base, he shouted, realizing that they couldn't hold their position any longer. We need to regroup and protect there. With a collective shout, the soldiers retreated toward the relative safety of the base, their hearts pounding with urgency. The Krill followed, relentless in their pursuit. Josh could feel the fear creeping in, but he pushed it aside. They would not let the enemy take Thar. Inside the base, chaos reigned. Soldiers scrambled to secure the entrances, fortifying their defenses. Josh and his team quickly took up positions, ready to fight for their lives and the life they had come to cherish. Get ready, Josh yelled as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the halls. The Krill were close, and they would stop at nothing to breach the defenses. He could hear the faint cries of alarm from the soldiers as they prepared for the worst. Remember why we fight, Josh shouted, looking into the eyes of his comrades. We protect Thar, and we protect our future. We are stronger together. As the Krill soldiers crashed into the base, the air erupted with the sound of gunfire. Josh felt his pulse quicken as he fought back, determined to defend the innocent life that had brought them all together. They moved with a fierce urgency, their bonds strengthening as they fought side by side. In the heat of battle, Josh caught a glimpse of the Krill commander, a dark figure directing the chaos. We need to take him out, he shouted to Scylla, determination blazing in his eyes. He's the key to breaking their morale. Scylla nodded, her gaze fierce. Let's end this. With a plan in mind, Josh and Scylla moved as one, weaving through the chaos as they approached the commander. He stood amidst his soldiers, barking orders, unaware of the storm brewing behind him. Now, Josh shouted as they drew closer, opening fire on the commander. The blast struck true, sending the Krill leader sprawling backward, chaos erupting among his troops. With their commander down, the Krill soldiers faltered, confusion spreading like wildfire. Seizing the moment, Josh and his team pressed forward, fighting with renewed vigor as they pushed the enemy back. Keep moving, Josh yelled, his voice hoarse but filled with determination. We can drive them out. The tide of the battle began to turn. With their leader fallen, the Krill soldiers scattered, their resolve crumbling in the face of the united front that Josh and his allies had created. The soldiers rallied, their spirits lifted as they pressed forward, driving the Krill back. As the last of the Krill soldiers retreated, Josh felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. They had held the line against overwhelming odds. But amidst the celebration, his heart still raced with concern for Thar. Check the perimeter. Ensure everyone is safe, Josh commanded, urgency filling his voice. He needed to know Thar was protected. As soldiers fanned out, Josh felt a moment of reprieve, but he knew it was only temporary. The war was far from over, and the Krill would undoubtedly regroup for another assault. But for now, they had won a battle, and that victory felt monumental. "Sela," Josh said, turning to her, gratitude flooding his heart. "Thank you for your help. We couldn't have done this without you." She smiled, her eyes bright with determination. "We fight for each other, Captain. Together, we are stronger. And we will protect her, no matter what." Together, they stood amidst the debris of the battlefield, knowing the fight was far from over. But as long as they had each other and the will to protect the innocent, they would face whatever came next. A plan for the future. The atmosphere inside the base was thick with anticipation as Josh surveyed the aftermath of their recent victory. The faint smell of smoke still lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of sweat and determination. Soldiers moved with purpose, reinforcing the barricades and ensuring that every weapon was primed and ready for the next assault. There was no time to rest. The Krill would undoubtedly regroup and strike again, and Josh was determined to be prepared. "Gather everyone for a briefing," Josh called out, his voice resonating through the makeshift command center. As the soldiers filed in, he could see the wariness etched on their faces. They had fought bravely, but the toll of war was beginning to weigh heavily on them. Still, he could also see the fire of determination burning in their eyes. This was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for a future. Once everyone was assembled, Josh stood before them, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. "I want to start by acknowledging how incredible you all were in the last battle. We held the line against overwhelming odds, and because of that, we have time to regroup and plan our next move." The room filled with murmurs of agreement, the soldiers visibly inspired by Josh's words. "However," he continued, his tone shifting to one of urgency, "we cannot let our guard down. We have received reports indicating that the Krill are mobilizing for another attack. They will be coming for us again, and this time, we need to be ready." As he spoke, Sela stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "If we can anticipate their movements, we can gain the upper hand. The Krill will be relying on their supply routes, and if we can disrupt those, we can weaken their forces significantly." Josh nodded, impressed by her strategic thinking. "Exactly. We need to hit them where it hurts. We'll launch a coordinated strike on their supply lines. If we can cut them off, we'll buy ourselves some crucial time." The soldiers exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and apprehension in the air. "We'll divide into teams," Josh said, taking control of the situation. "One team will focus on sabotage, while the other provides cover. Sela, I want you to lead the strike team. You know the terrain better than anyone." Sela's eyes sparkled with determination. "We'll hit them quickly and efficiently. They won't know what hit them." "Let's make sure we're all on the same page," Josh added, looking around the room. "We're fighting not just for our own lives, but for the future of the Voran people and for their. We need to be strategic, agile, and above all, united." As the soldiers prepared for their mission, the camaraderie among them grew stronger. They had forged bonds through shared experiences and a collective sense of purpose. Josh felt a swell of pride as he watched them work together, checking equipment, strategizing, and sharing quiet words of encouragement. "Remember, stay low and stick to the shadows," Josh reminded his team as they gathered their gear. "We don't want to draw attention to ourselves until the moment is right." As they moved out, the sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the war-torn landscape. They navigated through the ruins of the city, a haunting reminder of the destruction the Krill had wrought. Each step was calculated, and Josh's heart raced with anticipation and fear. "Keep your eyes peeled," he instructed, scanning the surroundings for any signs of enemy activity. "We need to be vigilant. The Krill will be looking for us." After what felt like hours of cautious movement, they reached the edge of a clearing where the Krill supply lines were visible. A convoy of armored vehicles lined up, their cargo crates stacked high. "There they are," Sela whispered, her gaze locked onto the target. If we can take out those vehicles, we'll cripple their operation. Josh nodded, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Let's do this. On my mark, we move in. As they positioned themselves behind the ruins, he could see the Krill soldiers milling about, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. Now, he shouted, leading the charge. The air erupted with the sound of gunfire as Josh and his team sprang into action. Plasma bolts lit up the area, striking true as they took down the first wave of Krill's soldiers. The element of surprise worked in their favor, and chaos erupted as the enemy scrambled to respond. Cover the vehicles, Josh yelled, pointing toward the armored transports. We can't let them escape. Sela moved with agility, her training evident as she darted through the chaos, her blades flashing in the sunlight. She took down enemy after enemy, her fierce spirit a force to be reckoned with. Josh fought alongside her, his plasma rifle blazing as he fought to protect his team and achieve their objective. As they engaged the Krill forces, the soldiers worked seamlessly together, covering each other's flanks and providing suppressive fire. The combination of Josh's tactical leadership and Scylla's expertise made them a formidable duo. But just as they began to gain the upper hand, a Krill officer barked orders, rallying his soldiers. Regroup. Push them back. The enemy began to organize, mounting a counterattack that threatened to overwhelm Josh's team. Fall back to the vehicles, Josh commanded, feeling the tide of battle shift. We need to hold our position. They retreated to a more defensible position behind the wreckage of a nearby building, catching their breath as they assessed the situation. The Krill were regrouping, and Josh knew they had to act fast. Listen up, he shouted to his team, his voice firm. We need to create a diversion. If we can distract them, we can finish off the supply convoy. Sela nodded, her eyes bright with determination. I can lead a flanking maneuver. We'll draw their fire away from the vehicles. Do it, Josh replied, confidence in her abilities bolstering his resolve. We'll hold this line and support you from here. As Sela and a small team moved out, Josh felt a surge of pride. They were fighting not just as soldiers, but as a family, a unit forged in the fires of battle. He could hear the sounds of chaos as Sela led the charge, drawing the attention of the Krill soldiers. Now, Josh shouted to his team as they opened fire on the distracted enemy. The battle raged on, each soldier pushing themselves to their limits as they fought against the tide of Krill soldiers. But just when they seemed to be gaining momentum, a loud explosion rocked the area, sending debris flying. Josh stumbled, catching himself against the side of the building. Everyone, get down, he shouted, fear gripping him. As the dust settled, he looked around, assessing the damage. The explosion had disrupted their plans, scattering his team and creating chaos. Regroup, he yelled, his heart pounding as he searched for Scylla and the others. Over here. He heard a voice call, and he rushed toward it. Scylla emerged from the smoke, her face smeared with dirt, but her eyes burning with determination. We need to push forward. They're vulnerable now. Josh nodded, adrenaline fueling his resolve. Let's finish this, together. With renewed purpose, they charged back into the fray, fighting with every ounce of strength they had left. The Krill forces, now disorganized and reeling from the explosion, struggled to mount a defense. Josh could see the fear in their eyes, and it invigorated him. Keep pushing, he yelled, rallying his soldiers as they fought tooth and nail. We can't let them regroup. With each step, they advanced, taking down enemy soldiers as they fought toward the supply convoy. The taste of victory was close, and Josh could feel it in his bones. They were winning, but they had to be relentless. As they neared the vehicles, Josh could see the cargo crates stacked high. We're almost there, he shouted, determination surging through him. Let's take down their resources. Sela moved alongside him, her fierce spirit igniting the fire in his heart. Together, they launched an all-out assault on the convoy, plasma bolts flying as they took down the Krill soldiers guarding the cargo. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. A massive krill warship appeared overhead, blocking out the sun as it descended, its ominous presence sending a wave of dread through Josh. "Fall back," he shouted, realizing the danger they were in. "We need to get to cover." The warship's cannons began to charge, the air crackling with energy. Josh knew they had to retreat or risk being caught in the blast. "We've done enough damage," he yelled, urging his soldiers to pull back. "We need to regroup at the base." As they fell back, Josh felt a sense of urgency rising within him. The battle was far from over, and they had to protect there. They made their way back to the base, adrenaline pumping as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the krill forces. Once inside the relative safety of the base, Josh took a moment to catch his breath. "We did well out there," he said, turning to his team. "We inflicted serious damage on their supply lines." "But they won't let this go," Sela warned, her expression serious. "We need to be ready for a counterattack. They'll come for us with everything they have." Josh nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The krill were relentless, and their desire for revenge would not be easily quenched. As night fell over the base, Josh took a moment to check on Tha. He entered the nursery, where the baby lay peacefully asleep, oblivious to the chaos surrounding him. Josh felt a surge of love and protectiveness wash over him. "You're the reason we fight," he whispered, gently brushing a finger against Tha's cheek. As he stood there, he realized that no matter how tough the battle became, he would do everything in his power to keep this child safe. Their future depended on it.